Heard of Q broadcast? It's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Stars. And the best part? There are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
All right, there we go. Is that, can you hear me now? Can you, yeah, so there we can hear it. All right. I guess I have to redo it again from the beginning because I didn't notice that the mic wasn't on there. So let me get it back to the beginning and I will go from the beginning. I'm sorry, I didn't notice the mic wasn't, I thought it was hooked up, so it kind of got me. So let's start this from the beginning. Welcome back to No Kings on the Hill. I'm your host, Dr. Hill. Before we begin, if you are new, hit follow or subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who wants a clear understanding of law, policy, and power. As you see our website scrolling across the bottom of your screen, No Kings on the Hill with drlaw.com, please be sure to check it out where you can find links to all of our other socials and find previous episodes. Also, subscribe for free to gain access to our weekly blog, or subscribe to one of our 3 paid tiers to support us in bringing you daily episodes and a chance at being a guest host once a month. Daily subscriber-only lives and Discord chats, along with a chance to choose the next topic we cover. Please leave us a review to let us know how we are doing. Also, currently, I have Sheriff Mack, president of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, scheduled as a guest host on Wednesday, May 13th. And I'm currently working on scheduling a date this month for Joseph Lombardi of Ironhawk Financial for a special episode on financial literacy and investment. Now, when there's an attempted assassination on an incumbent president, it's more than just a crime. It's a warning sign, a sign of the health of our political system and where we could be headed. There's a reason we're talking about this tonight. Beyond what happened, we're talking about why it's happening and what it means for the role of law. Now, we're going to analyze the law. We're going to dive into the data, and we're going to discuss the atmosphere that cultivates violence like this that we've seen over these last 8 to 10 years. In episode 29 of No Kings on the Hill, so let's get time to drill down. Sorry I had to restart this. I didn't notice my mic wasn't connected, so now everybody should be able to hear me. I see the audio now, so I don't see how you're not. Yep. Okay. So the audio is definitely working now. All right, cool. All righty. So I'm going to go ahead and get started back on the monologue again, which I was almost done with. I'll just restart it. Okay. So let's get going here now that everybody can hear me across YouTube, X, Kick, Rumble, and all that. All right. So when someone tries to assassinate a president, it's not just a crime, it is a message. When political violence reaches the highest levels of society, as it has here, it tells you a lot about where a political system stands, and it can also tell you where things are headed. In the case of the United States, the data we have today paints a deeply unsettling picture. Political violence isn't just becoming more common here, it's changing. And the way we collect the data. The FBI and Department of Homeland Security have been warning about domestic violent extremism for years, defined as individuals who seek to effect political change through force or violence. We've known for a long time that violent acts are being committed by people from across the political spectrum. Violence is motivated by more than ideology. There's anger fueling this. There's identity fueling this. There's a sense of legitimacy fueling this. By the way, the founders expected it to happen. James Madison wrote in Federalist Number 10 that the latent causes of faction are sown in the nature of man. The seeds of division are embedded in who we are. It's not a question of if they'll occur, it's a question of what happens when they become powerful enough to destroy a system. Madison addressed that question too. The instability, injustice, and confusion have been the mortal diseases under which popular governments have everywhere perished. When you step back and you look at the bigger picture today, you begin to understand why that warning still matters and what that warning meant. Right now, we are seeing assaults and plots against government facilities and officials at the highest levels we've seen in at least 3 decades. That isn't noise, that's a trend. President Trump's the first president to ever have 3 assassination attempts. I think the record before that was 2. So, and this is where it starts to get tricky, where it becomes politicized. This year, for the first time in decades, we are seeing left-wing extremist violence actually exceeding right-wing violence according to data. Still speaking for a year is obviously not forever. It doesn't mean the entire landscape is inverted. It doesn't mean one side owns violence. It means the balance is changing, or that's what they want us to think. We've seen the majority of deadly attacks in recent years come from right-wing attackers, but left-wing attackers are happening with greater frequency, which again, I'll get into the data a minute ago and see how they actually look at it. But then at any point in recent memory, if you focus on a single frame, you miss the trajectory. What we're seeing today is not replacement, it's an escalation. Different forms of violence are increasing at different times, but they're all trending up. Fragility, which brings us to another thing we never talk about with accuracy, is attribution. You hear very strong claims about political violence only coming from one side of the ideological spectrum. But if you actually look at how the federal government approaches this, fairly quickly, that claim starts to lose accuracy. The FBI doesn't catalog ideology. They care about behavior, violence, threats, and potential criminal activity. That's it. But where do these ideas come from that it's right-wing? Through non-governmental databases and NGOs, organizations that are assigning these labels to incidents, and that takes judicial judgment, what constitutes left-wing, what constitutes right-wing, and what falls into other categories. Sometimes those buckets are broad. That doesn't mean information is now useless, but it helps you understand it's being interpreted, not just reported. It's also biased based on the political viewpoints of the people conducting the studies. Some say every violent political attack with a gun is right-wing. I mean, explain how that makes sense, any at all. You don't have to be right-wing to use a firearm in a political attack. And once we have this idea in our minds, it stops just describing the world we live in. It starts shaping that world, which brings me to the most important piece, our rhetorical environment. We live in a political environment where words absolutely matter, not disagreement, not existentialization. When we say people are trying to ruin democracy or they're a fascist or Hitler, those are value judgments, words with moral weight behind them. All right, Hamilton warned about this in Federalist Number 1. A dangerous ambition more often lurks behind the suspicious mask of zeal. Most people know this is rhetoric, but not everybody. Some people take those words literally. And when someone actually believes that an elected official is an existential threat to them or to democracy, violence can start to feel like a reasonable solution. I mean, who wouldn't think that to kill Hitler would be a good thing? I mean, anybody would agree with that if it was the real Hitler from World War II, that if you kill him, it would be a good thing. So you can't sit there and use that again and again and again to the point where people actually start believing it's real. This isn't Democratic or Republican behavior. It's human behavior. So it comes out both ways. It could be used both ways too. Republicans, if they started saying the same things about Democrats, it could end up happening the other way. So fear, insult, validation. And when you couple that with an algorithmic media landscape, you're not just preaching ideas, you're amplifying them, you're normalizing extremism. And that's what we're seeing. All right, sorry, I was looking at something real quick. And in extremely rare cases, inspiring action. This is the sort of instability our founders were worried about. Hamilton wrote that our Constitution would guard against that tendencies in which checks, laws, and guardrails. Because the alternative is obvious: unrest, chaos, collapse. A republic is not destroyed with one act of violence. It's destroyed when you start to see those acts when they can be explained away. All right, that's what we're starting to see. When they're considered part of the political arena. Prosecution can handle the act. Security can stop the planning. But both of those become exceedingly difficult when our politics has accepted the idea that violence is politically justifiable. And that's sure what it seems like it's been coming to. Who am I to define it? I'm not defining it. It's who decides whether it's right or left wing is not NGO. It's not the FBI. It's non-governmental organizations that are usually left-leaning that decide it. So why should they get to decide it? But, all right, so segment 1, looking at what happened. Okay, so before we jump into analysis, let's take a minute and talk about what we know. When we see incidents like this, there is very little space between fact and story. As we've seen from now I'm going to switch to start sharing stuff. So hold on a second. Let me get there we go. I'm trying to get the pages shared up. Sorry, anybody that's watching on TikTok, you won't be able to see any of this, but just getting the videos and stuff from it. So obviously, we know that according to Reuters, reporters from AP and Reuters and numerous other major outlets are describing this as an event where an individual traveled prepared and attacked with purpose. Obviously, we know from his 1,000-piece manifesto that he took a Amtrak train from California with a stop in Chicago all the way to DC to avoid the TSA and to be able to take his firearms with him. And we know that happened. And we know that according to the AP, it's Cole Thomas Allen appeared in court to face federal charges after the chaotic encounter Saturday that resulted in shots being fired, Trump being hurried off the stage unharmed, and guests ducking for cover underneath the tables. He was ordered to remain jailed pending additional court hearings and faces up to life in prison if convicted of the assassination count alone. The discharging a firearm in aspect of a crime is a minimum 20-year sentence, period. So he's going to serve 20 years no matter what. That's minimum sentence for discharging a firearm in the act of a crime. And we've seen that obviously Monday revealed additional details about the plan behind the assault, with authorities alleging that Allen on April 6th reserved a room for himself at the Washington Hotel where the event would be held weeks later under its typical tight security. He traveled by train across country from California last week, checking himself into the Washington Hilton one day before the dinner with a room reserved for the weekend. Now, obviously, he didn't know that Trump was going to be there at this time, but obviously he knew some of Trump's cabinet would be there at this time. So this proves that he had premeditation for months ahead of time. I mean, you had to book those hotels long times in advance. It shows that he booked it a month in advance. And at that time, he wouldn't even known Trump was coming there. Obviously, he would have known White House officials would be there. Trump administration officials were coming. And then he took a week-long train to get there. So this guy didn't just decide this out of nowhere. We know that this was long thought out and distant. This wasn't something he decided to pick overnight. I mean, that's because that's the difference between reactionary behavior and planned behavior is intent. And that's where we've got it from. The showing intent is showing that he meant to try to assassinate the president, because we know that he had movement, prep, and attack, and that he prepared for this. He had also purchased the firearms months or weeks a year in advance, I think, according to his sister, and that he was also a regular attendee at the local gun range there by their house. Now, why in the world he chose a shotgun, I don't know. That honestly doesn't make sense to me. I mean, yes, if you're using buckshot, it's got larger of a spread, but still, that is not a long distance. It shows how little he actually probably knew about firearms themselves, or he would have picked something different. But we know that he didn't just show up spontaneously. He didn't come from out of nowhere. We know he took a train that took a week to get there. And we know that he took his time. We know that this was something planned, which means the question is going to be, are they going to find how he was radicalized? Was he radicalized in college? Was he radicalized online? Was he part of another group? I mean, obviously, the reason why we saw the videos of Secret Service and National Guard and all of them springing to action and standing in front of the president and everything and looking around was because they didn't know if this guy was the only assassin that was there. They didn't know if they were going to have a whole room of assassins or not. So they had to make that decision on whether they're going to do that or whether they're going to stay with it. And obviously, we know that he took planning to execution. Obviously, I don't know where I guess maybe he thought he was doing this in a video game and somehow that he was going to run past 100 people and run past and make it somehow into a big, huge ballroom with 3,000 people, where from what I could see in the graphics where they caught him, he was still had to go down a whole flight of stairs to actually get into the ballroom itself. He wasn't anywhere near the actual ballroom whenever he was near it, but he wasn't actually made it into the ballroom. And I'm gonna pull the this is the affidavit. I gotta try to get to where I can actually read it here, because that's not what I want, because then y'all can't see me. All right. I just gotta close my, there we go. I gotta close that for now. I guess I gotta just open it up in my, I'm just gonna have to open it up on my Adobe and read it. So this was the affidavit that they got on him, which pretty much says the facts set forth in this affidavit are based on information that I've obtained from my personal involvement in the investigation and from other law enforcement officers who have been involved in this investigation, on documents that I've received. Obviously, this is an officer making his testimony, and on my training experience, where I've reported statements made by others or from documents that I have reviewed. Those statements are reported in substance and in part, unless otherwise indicated. This affidavit is intended to show merely that there is sufficient probable cause for the requested complaint and does not set forth all of my knowledge about this matter. It talks about the agent's background, which he's an FBI and law enforcement officer. Probable cause: on April 25th, 2026, White House Correspondents Association dinner was held at the Washington Hilton Hotel located at 1919 Connecticut Avenue. Multiple high-ranking U.S. government officials attended and were featured at the dinner, including President of the United States Donald J. Trump, the Vice President of the United States, and multiple cabinet secretaries, including like the whole top line of succession, top 3 or 4 people in the line of succession, actually, because you had the Speaker of the House there too, and you had the Secretary of State. More than 7 weeks earlier, on March 2nd, 2026, President Trump publicly announced that he would attend the dinner. Posting on his True Social account, the White House Correspondents Association has asked me very nicely to be the honoree at this year's dinner, a long and storied tradition since it began in 1924 under the President Calvin Coolidge. President Trump added that it would be his honor and to accept the invitation. The March 2nd, 2026 post was publicized by various media outlets, which honestly, I didn't even see that till later on, that like days ahead of time. So that even looks worse for Alan. If Alan knew March 2nd, would have known about it, and honor about April 6th, Alan made the hotel reservation at the Washington Hilton Hotel for 3 nights. Honor about April 21st, Alan traveled by train from his home near Los Angeles, California to Chicago, Illinois, arrived in Chicago. Honor about April 23rd. That same day, Alan boarded a train in Chicago, Illinois, which arrived in D.C. on the 24th. I mean, this not looking really good for him, because that's totally planned. I didn't even see President Trump's acceptance of the him accepting to go to the White House Correspondents' dinner until like days before the dinner. So showing that he actually had put out a True Social post before Alan had ever actually booked the hotel shows that Alan knew the president was going to be there, that was his ultimate goal. Even though he said in his 1,000-word letter that was cabinet officials, but he knew from the time that he booked the hotel that President Trump was going to be at the White House Correspondents' Center. And then it says, at approximately 8:40 p.m., Allen approached a security checkpoint on the terrace level of the hotel. Leading to the location of the dinner, Allen approached and ran through the magnetometer holding a long gun. As he did so, U.S. Secret Service personnel assigned to the checkpoint heard a loud gunshot. U.S. Secret Service Officer VG was shot once in the chest. Officer VG was wearing a ballistic vest at the time. Officer VG drew a service weapon and fired multiple times at Allen, who fell to the ground and suffered minor injuries but was not shot. Allen was subsequently arrested. At the time of his arrest, Allen was in possession of a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun and a Rock Island Armory 1911 38 caliber pistol on his person. As part of this investigation, law enforcement reviewed records of firearm transactions from California and federal database sources. The database records showed that on or about August 17, 2025, so over a year ahead, almost a full year ahead of time, Allen purchased a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun from a firearm dealer in the city of California. And that on or about October 6, 23, Allen purchased a 38 caliber semi-automatic pistol from a firearm dealer in a different city in California. Based on the serial numbers and database records, these 2 firearms are the same 2 firearms Allen possessed and are fired at the Washington Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. on April 25, 2026. Following his arrest, Allen was advised of his Miranda rights and invoked his right to remain silent. Allen was transported to Howard University Hospital for minor injuries and has since been released to law enforcement custody. I mean, it's not looking good for this guy. They've got him pretty much dead to rights. There's no way he can really get out of this. I don't know what he even thinks he can do if he can even try to get out of it, because they've got him dead to rights. They've got the timeline locked down. Shortly before 8:40 p.m. on April 25th, Allen sent an email to members of his family and a former employer explaining the actions he was about to take. The email, a copy of which law enforcement has obtained from a recent receipt stated, "I wish I could have said anything earlier, but doing so would have made none of this possible. My sincerest apologies for all the trouble I've caused. Scheduled send Cole. Based on my training experience with electronic accounts, I believe that under these circumstances, the phrase scheduled send means that before attempting to breach the security perimeter at approximately 8:40 p.m. on April 25th, Allen used settings in his email account to schedule the email to automatically send at a predetermined time without additional actions from him. Attached to the email was a text file titled Apology and Explanation, which stated in part, so I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. Let me start off by apologizing to everyone who trust I abused. I apologize to my parents for saying I had an interview without specifying it was for Most Wanted. I apologize to my colleagues and students for saying I had a personal emergency. By the time anyone reads this, I'll probably most certainly do need to go to the ER, but can hardly call that not a self-inflicted status. I apologize to all the people I traveled next to, all the workers who handled my luggage, and all the other non-targeted people at the hotel who I put in danger simply by being near. I apologize to everyone who abused or murdered before this, to all those who suffered before I was able to attempt this, to all who may still suffer after, regardless of my success or failure. I don't accept forgiveness, but if I could have seen any other way to get this close, I would have taken it. Again, my sincere apologies. Onto why I did any of this. I'm a citizen of the United States of America. Why my representatives do reflects on me. What my representatives do reflects on me, and I am no longer willing to permit I'm not going to say the words, PR and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. Well, to be completely honest, I was no longer willing a long time ago, but this is the first real opportunity I've had to do something about it. While I'm discussing this, I'll also go over my expected rules of engagement, probably in a terrible format, but I'm not military, so too bad. I mean, this guy is, yeah, I mean, all he needs is testimony. This is all they need right here. This guy literally drawn out what he was wanting to do, why he was wanting to do it, and everything like that. So I don't know what he thinks how he's gonna get away with that. It makes no sense to me at all. But yeah, this is crazy, the stuff that he's put on this list and what he said on it. And that's not even his whole thing. Like I said, I couldn't read some of it because obviously this is on TikTok, so I couldn't read everything. I tried to read most of it. But anybody that's watching me on TikTok, please tap that screen, like, repost, share, if you can help with that, or repost, share it. Tap that screen, and whenever I get done with the podcast on YouTube and everything, then I will go ahead and still stay on my live on TikTok. So anybody who's watching me on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Facebook, Kick, if y'all want to discuss or have a multi-guest discussion after this episode, please check out my TikTok page at No Kings on the Hill with Dr. Earl, and that's where I'll be at once I'm done with the episode. So I'm going to see where we're at 30 minutes. So we still got some time. I guess I can go ahead and finish what he was reading. I got to get the page. I got to move pages so y'all can see the next one. But let me get this up where I can read it for you, and I'll get the rest of it done. All right. So he goes, well, I'm discussing administration officials, not including Mr. Patel. They are targets prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. Secret Service, they are targets only if necessary and to be incapacitated non-lethally if possible. AK, I hope they're wearing body armor because center mass with shotguns messes up people who aren't. Hotel security, not targets if at all possible. AK, unless they shoot at me. Capitol Police, same as hotel security. National Guard, same as hotel security. Hotel employees, not targets at all. Guests, not targets at all. In order to minimize casualties, I will also be using buckshot rather than slugs, less penetration through walls. Okay. I would still go through most everyone here to get to the targets if it were absolutely necessary on the basis that most people chose to attend a speech what he said again, and are thus complicit. But I really hope it doesn't come to that. Allen signed his email, Cold Force Friendly Federal Assassin Allen. I know from my investigation that Allen used the moniker Cold Force and multiple online accounts associated with him. And this kid's got some messed up head. I guess he thinks he's some hero or some video game player or something. I mean, it makes no sense at all. I mean, it's crazy that this is what this kid said. And this is the stuff that he's been led to believe, even though the majority of the stuff that he makes claims on are not true. They've been proven false or haven't been factually proven criminally. But yet, because enough people have gone out there and pushed it on TikTok and pushed it on social media, people like this start actually believing it and then start believing that they should do something about it. But the problem is it's sad that we've even come to this position in our society. If you're going to do something about it, get out and vote in the primaries. Vote out the people that you don't want in there. Go run for office yourself. Don't go and try to take out a duly elected official that over 50% of the United States population voted into office, or that person appointed into their offices that they're serving in, or the ones that have been elected into those offices. That's not political violence is never okay. It doesn't matter what side it's on. I can promise you there's plenty of times they all try to blame they try to say that it's mainly right-wing political violence. Well, explain to me why Obama ever had an attempt on his life. Explain to me why Biden didn't have any on his. Because I can promise you there's plenty of Republicans and right-wing people that hated both of them. But they still didn't go do something stupid like that. They did it. They dealt with it by going to the voting box. By voting, going to the ballot box. By using their voice, by protesting, not by making violent criminal actions against them. And that's where that's the problem with this. So, I mean, the ideology is kind of clear on here that he's been following everything that's on the left based on just what he calls Trump. And that's simple from that fact. And that he had planned this for a while because he purchased these firearms. And he even says in his letter that he had been wanting to do this for a long time, but this was the first chance he got. And that, like, his apology to any innocent bystanders would make a difference. Or then that his fact that, because they attended it, that they're somehow guilty because he doesn't agree with the person who's attending it. I'm sorry, but if every time somebody attended an event and there was a criminal at that event that was also attending and you had guilty by association, everybody in this world would be in prison. I mean, that's how ignorant and stupid that line of thinking is that you're going to make somebody just guilty by being in the same room as that person or going to an event that they're at. That makes no sense at all, because you can't control an event that you're going to that's put on by your job or your career, that's part of your job or your career, or that's to recognize you, that's put on. You can't control who's there. You can't control who puts it on. But you still go because it's something you're supposed to go to. It's correspondence dinner. So obviously journalists are going to show up because it's the White House Correspondence Center. It's journalists that work at the White House or have worked at the White House, and then people that they actually invent. And that's where we're getting. This has gotten ridiculous. And like I said, we've getting look at the law and why he will be charged with what he's going to be charged with. I'm going to I got to switch my pages real quick and let me pull up let me switch, remove that one, go to here. Okay, there we go. All right, trying to get the different laws or stuff that he's looking at that he's being punished. So we know what occurred. Now let's talk about how the law views it. because from a legal perspective, what occurred was more than just violence. It's an attack on government. And obviously we got leftists saying, oh, this wasn't an assassination. It wasn't an attempt assassination, or it was faked, or it was a staged one, which is ridiculous. So looking at the text of 18 USC Code 1751, presidential staff assassination, kidnapping, and assault penalties. Whoever kills any individual who is the president of the United States, or the president-elect, the vice president, or if there is no vice president, the officer next in the order of succession to the office of the president of the United States, the vice president-elect, or any person who is acting as president under the Constitution and laws of the United States, and any person appointed under Section 105A(2)(a) of Title III, employed in the executive office of the president, or appointed under Section 106A(1)(a) of Title III, employed in the office of the vice president, shall be punished as provided by Sections 1111 through 1112 of this title. Whoever kidnaps any individual designated in subsection A of this section shall be punished by imprisonment for any term of years or for life, or 2, by death or imprisonment for any term of years or for life if death results to such individual. Whoever attempts to kill or kidnap any individual designated in subsection A of this section shall be punished by imprisonment for any terms of years or for life. If 2 or more persons conspire to kill or kidnap any individual designated in subsection A of this section, and 1 or more of such persons do any act to affect the object of the conspiracy, each shall be punished, 1, by imprisonment for any term of years or for life, or 2, by death or imprisonment for any term of years or for life if death results in such individual. In other words, pretty much he didn't even have to physically get a shot off to the president or do anything that to get sentenced to life. All he had to do was attempt. Whether he made it inside of the actual ballroom or not, it was still what his intent was, and his attempt to do was what his intent was when he was attempting to do something, which obviously we know his attempt was to assassinate the president and anybody that was in the president's cabinet that he could get to. So you don't have to reach your objective to be punished. The most severely under federal law, intent, preparation, you take a substantial step to commit the crime. Attempt, that's what we care about. It's not, that has to be completed. The law wants you to go from thought to action, speech to action, planning to action, which he did. A substantial step, that's where speech stops and action begins in the eyes of the law. Conspiracy to commit an offense. Okay, so that's where the line is drawn. And that's where most people get confused about federal criminal law. They think that because the target wasn't hit, that it's not as bad. It goes wrong fully, it's a problem. That's not how our laws are structured. Our laws are supposed to stop you before you finish your crime, or even stop you before you attempt to commit the offense. Because once you finish your crime, we're not preventing damage, we're mitigating it. And that's what Secret Service and everybody's role is the Secret Service's role is to act like they do. They don't wait for attacks to occur. They prevent them, research patterns, stopping attempts before they happen. Now, where the Secret Service failed here and did not have this guy on their watch list, considering was supposedly a member of some far leftist anti-government groups, and that he had been online and known for this stuff. Even his sister had said about his radical ideologies. The question is why didn't the Secret Service have him on their radar? And why did they allow him to even, I mean, I know why they allowed a guy to have firearms inside of a 1,000 unit hotel, because that person could be there for hunting. You can't stop everybody in a 1,000-room hotel from doing something else outside of their own, because they have nothing to do with the president or that ballroom, which is why we need a White House ballroom, so this isn't an issue. You don't have to worry about 1,000 other people being inside of a building where the president or the whole line of succession staff sits. And that's what we saw the other Saturday night. Was we had president, vice president, Speaker of the House, and Secretary of State, the top four in line of succession to the presidency, all in one building, with where it's almost impossible to fully secure because of the fact that there's 1,000 rooms in that building. There's no way you can check and verify every single one of those rooms. Now, I'm sure they're going to figure out somehow why this guy wasn't on their radar, how they had messed him, to have been able to go check his room, that should have triggered them to go check his room once they saw him on the manifest or saw him on the as having a reservation. But we don't know that yet, because if he wasn't, obviously the FBI and the Secret Service can't monitor every keystroke you make. So considering this guy was intelligent, seemed highly intelligent, and did stuff in computer programming and engineering, he probably knew how to run through a VPN, cover his tracks to where nobody could actually track him. And that's probably why we don't see him and see that happening. So we'll have to wait for further stuff to come in on that. But that's kind of where we're getting in on this stuff, is the question of where are we going to, how can the Secret Service to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because this is the 4th attempt on President Trump's life, the 3rd attempt where he's been in the vicinity. Butler, Pennsylvania, then the one at his golf course, then this one, but there was also another one where a guy with a shotgun and a gas can tried to enter Mar-a-Lago, but President Trump wasn't there at the time. So they're only counting the 3 because the 3 were the only ones where he was actually in the vicinity of the assassin. But there was another one, so it's technically 4. And before this, I think the max amount of assassinations ever been attempted on a president were 2. And I can't remember exactly who that was. It was Coolidge or somebody back there. Reagan had 1. Obviously, Kennedy had 1, and that ended him. But when you look at the data and the trends, that's where it gets kind of crazy. And I got to try to see if I can get it. This is what he had. This is the full charging document released, the firearms, the knives that he had on him, and equipment. This is the threat assessment case for 2025. Number of United States Capitol Police threat assessment cases has climbed for the 3rd year in a row. In 2025, the USCP's threat assessment section, TAS, investigated 14,938 concerning statements, behaviors, and communications directed against members of Congress, their family, staff, and the Capitol complex. While security of Capitol grounds has already improved, we have been strengthening our partnerships with law enforcement agencies across the country to keep the members of Congress safe when they are away from the Capitol, said U.S. Capitol Police Chief Michael Sullivan. We want to make sure agencies have the resources they need to be able to enhance protection, which is critical to the domestic process. The USCP establishes formal agreements with partner law enforcement agencies to coordinate law enforcement. I mean, this is just on the Capitol side, what we've seen as far as the threat assessments going up. It's not just on President Trump. It's on all, we're seeing it with all of the, with everybody, with all of our government officials. Now, I got to open back up my ADP again because I got to remember exactly which page to turn this to get the actual data on it. It's 47 pages. It's a 47-page document, so I'm trying to remember the exact page. I was running late today trying to get everything pulled together, and that's why I started an hour late and started at 6 instead of 5. But I didn't get time to go through and pull everything out into a shared document, so I'll get it here. But that's page 25. No, come on. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. All right, so let me get this changed through here for everybody that's on TikTok. Not TikTok, but I mean YouTube and everything. So anti-government or anti-authority violent extremism at the end of FY 2022 was at 31%, and it's gone up since then. As the end of FY 2022, the FBI's DT program included approximately 2,700 pending investigations. Approximately half of the FY 22 investigations were directly related to the unlawful activities during the 21 breach of the Capitol. The following table presents the percentage breakdown of investigations within the FBI's DT program by investigative case classification as of the year FY 2022. And I've still been trying to figure out where the rest of the data was because I really wanted to go through it and show that what the FBI has versus what the actual nonprofits have are two totally different things. The FBI doesn't label as right wing or left wing, but a lot of the nonprofits and NGOs do label anything that is violent with a firearm as right wing, which makes no sense because left wing people use firearms. It's not there. There's no political background to who uses a firearm. Obviously, there's maybe political ideology of who agrees with using them or not, but whenever it seems to come into attack or making attacks on stuff, it doesn't seem to matter much. And so I was trying to find the full data on that, but a lot of the data that they have is old. And I was trying to remember. Okay, let me try this one right here. Let's see what this one's got on it. This is the other CDC, domestic terrorism one, the escalating terrorism problem in the United States. This goes back to 2020 again. Unfortunately, almost all the data is fairly old as far as what's been put out. There's not a whole lot of new 2025 data as far as the data that's coming out currently this year. A lot of it's all from 2020, 2022, because most data in the federal government is behind 5 to 6 years. So that's the only downside to it. But according to current updated numbers that they've looked at, this is pretty much political violence and plots since the 1994, you hardly had any. And then the early 2000s, it went down again, jumped up again, and then still a good percentage of all the attacks. And majority of them are religious. And then left wing is the blue, right wing is the light baby blue, the left wing is the teal. And it shows obviously that in these, like in 2020, it tried to say it was all right wing and no left wing. And then the crazy thing is, even 2017, 2018, it showed right wing over, which made no sense because that was when Trump was in office. But it's the way that they do these. I've got the methodology, which I'm not going to go through because the methodology, I didn't have time to take a bunch of short clips in. But the methodology is based on, literally it states in there that it's based on the weapons. That's how they do it. That they decide what type of weapon they use, whether it's left or right ideologically backed. So they also pretty much take majority of the religious ones and look at religious attacks too and put those on right wing, as considered as labeled being right wing. But I'm going to get to our founding fathers and kind of what they said about this, because there's too much to go through in that, and I've only got about 10 minutes left. Like I said, I was running behind on today's schedule, but I will look at this Pew Research Center. Stark partisan divide in who thinks their side is winning and losing in politics. A year into President Donald Trump's second term, and with his party controlling both chambers of Congress, 6 in 10 Republicans say their side has been winning more often than losing on the issues that matter to them. Meanwhile, 88% of Democrats say their side has been losing, according to Pew Research Center survey from January. In the 10 years that we have asked this question, Americans overall have consistently been more likely to say their side is losing than to say it's winning. That continues to be the case. Still, the share who say their side is winning, 33%, is higher than at any point during the Biden administration. It's largely because Republicans are now more likely to say their side is winning than Democrats were to say during their time. So, yeah. Today, 60% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents say their side is winning more often than losing. Majorities of Republicans also said this in 2020, 69%, 2019, 54% during the second half of Trump's first term. By contrast, during Biden's term, no more than 36% of Democrats and Democratic leaners said they felt their side was winning more often than losing. And my question is, how do you feel your side's more often losing when you're actually in power? That's just hilarious. That's how they do it about. But I'm going to go ahead and get on the Federalist framework and go over that. So this isn't new. The founders saw this coming. Madison wrote, "The latent causes of faction are embedded in the nature of man." Factionalism is inevitable. Conflict is inevitable. It's what a system does with that conflict that matters. And that's pretty much what our founding fathers did. The instability, injustice, and confusion have been the moral diseases under which popular governments have everywhere perished. And that's from Madison again. I believe that was Federalist 10. So that's not hyperbolic. That's a diagnosis. We're looking at, Madison was talking about what happens when the faction takes over. When a majority finds itself included in a faction, Madison warned, then it has nothing to check its violence against the public, good, and the rights of other citizens. Right? When politics is driven by passion, unchecked by restraint, when that happens, our systems begin to fail. If a faction draws swords, Hamilton said, a dangerous ambition lurks behind the mask of zeal. That's just rhetoric. That's escalation. When we look at that, and that gets us right into the environment we find ourselves in today that we're seeing happen right now. All right, so getting on, that was just a short segment. Getting on with the segment 5, rhetoric and radicalization. We are operating within a political culture where language has shifted. Not tone, not disagreement, but morality. Calling your political opponents enemies. That's literally what we're seeing today. Demographic threats, homeland threats. If you watch the news today, most people understand that to mean fighting words. Not everyone. Some people hear it and they listen. And of course, they don't just listen, they hear it as if someone believes at the core of their identity that another person who simply disagrees with them on political issues is an existential threat to this country, then what are they going to do? They will just justify extreme measures to stop that threat. That's not Democratic or Republican. That's how the system is designed. Radicalization occurs when you mix grievance, urgency, and justification. And we've got to stop it. I mean, in an online-driven world by algorithm, those thoughts don't just spread, they amplify. And we see that happening. I see it every time I try to debate people on the left. They always want to take everything back to Trump and whatever. They never want to actually debate the issue that's at that time that we're talking about. They amplify until they reach a few people who are motivated to do something about it. And that brings us to the importance of interpretation. All right? It's the data versus the narrative. They'll tell you violence only happens on one side of the aisle, which we know is not true. The federal government doesn't say it like that. The FBI records actions, attacks, threats, determination to act, but not motivation. They don't look at why somebody did. They look at did they do it? Ideology is something most people deduce after examining the data. All right, the data which is sorted by classification systems that rely on the information they have in human judgment. That doesn't render their information useless, but take it with a grain of salt. It's someone's interpretation. It's not a clear set decision. It's not a clear set data, scientific way to look at it. Once we think everyone believes something, we look for evidence to support that belief. And then we behave accordingly, which is what we see going on now. All right, so in closing, democracy does not die in one day. A republic is not destroyed by one act of violence. It dies when those who are expected, when they are rationalized, when they are politically mobilized. All right. The instability, injustice, and confusion have been the moral diseases. The law can punish violence. Security can deter the attack, but neither can repair a political culture slowly coming to accept violence as normal. That's the threat. That's the challenge. And that's why this matters. We can't start accepting violence or political violence as normal. As always, if you haven't, please stop by No Kings on the Hill at drlaw.com and click the links to our social media and streaming services. Subscribe for free, and you'll get access to our weekly blog as well as notifications when we release our next episode. Or pick one of our 3 paid subscriptions and not only gain entry to win a monthly guest host segment, but get access to subscriber-only lives and Discord channels, as well as directly support us to start bringing you more live episodes weekly and live interviews and guests. Remember, we go live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern on the Patriots Para Network through Q Broadcasting, and can be found on Rumble and X, or search No Kings on the Hill, Dr. Hill on YouTube, Facebook, Kick, X. Stay free, stay frosty, my friends. I'll see you on the Hill next week. And sorry if this show is a little different. It's the first time I've really done a show with doing shared documents and shared screens whenever it was just me here. So I'm used to usually having a guest host when I do that, but little different setup. So y'all have a good night. And like I said, I'll be doing my TikTok. It looks like I might have to reset it because it's been on there so long, but y'all have a good night and I will see y'all next week. Hopefully I will be letting y'all know either this Monday or the following Monday when I'm going to have my other interview. Obviously the 13th, I have my interview with Sheriff Mack, and then the financial literacy one will be on financial investment one. It'll be on a Monday, probably this next Monday or the following Monday. I will let y'all know as soon as I get that tied down, and y'all have a great evening.